Gentlemen, welcome back. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Today, we're going to take a look at the differences between NETA and NICET, specifically the NICET Electrical Power Testing Program, or EPT program. I feel I'm uniquely qualified to make this video. Huge brag here. I have both the NETA 4 and the NICET EPT Level 4 certification, the highest level of certification for both. I'll touch on my personal experience with both of them towards the end of the video. I didn't go to college, so I put these two up on my wall because they look fancy. People ask me all the time what the differences are, which one's better, what are the tests like, when should you take one exam or the other, and most often I'm asked by other technicians how I studied for the exams. I'll get to all of those in this video. If you're only interested in the study guide, there's a timestamp here. All of the other timestamps for the other sections of the video will be down in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. I'll start with the similarities for the uninitiated because they're quite similar in a few ways. NETA and NICET are both organizations that certify electrical testing technicians here in North America. If you're not in North America, hi, it's great to have you, but this video is not going to be super helpful for you. Having a NETA or NICET certification of a certain level is kind of like a badge of honor. It's an accreditation that you can use to guarantee some level of quality in your work or some level of authority in your opinion when you say that electrical equipment passes or fails and is ready to go into service. They both have 4 levels, starting with 1 being entry level or apprentice level, and going up to 4 is a highly skilled lead technician. You need to have a requisite number of years working in the field to qualify for your next level. Both organizations have roughly the same experience and skill requirements for each level, and we'll get to what those are specifically in a few minutes. Once you're qualified, you sit for an exam, and if you pass, you get a fancy piece of paper and a new line for your email signature. Many testing companies offer bonuses or raises based on your certification level, and I can say from experience you can ask for a lot more money when interviewing based on your level. It works sort of as a barometer to gauge your career progression even as you move from company to company. The focal point for most technicians regarding the two organizations is the exams. The level 2 exams are usually fairly easy for the average guy who's seen the inside of switchgear before, while the 3 and 4 have a lot of questions on electrical theory, acceptance testing, analyzing results, electrical maintenance, and protection devices. The level 4 exams are notoriously hard for both organizations. Neither organization have requirements for things like union membership, college degrees, or an electrical journeyman's license because testing is sort of seen as its own trade for the most part. That's great for guys coming in from other trades or guys like me who started out as a kid in electrical testing and never went through an apprenticeship and I didn't really go to college. Techs certified by either agency will typically use the NETA acceptance or maintenance testing standard as their guideline for how to test equipment and analyze the results. I'll get to why that is later because it is kind of interesting. Lastly, you as a technician need to maintain a given number of continuing education credits to keep on file with the agency to maintain your certification over the long term. NETA was founded in 1972 when the need for standardization in electrical testing was called for by several larger groups. They're accredited by ANSI, the American National Standards Institute. NETA regularly reviews and publishes the acceptance testing standard and maintenance testing standard manuals, which are sort of like the Bible for technicians out in the field. These lay out the required tests, required results to pass each test, recommended best practices, and responsibilities for testing companies. They constantly work on improving their standards, finding new ways to identify issues, grow the industry, and deal with the ever-changing environment of industrial electrical equipment. For instance, the newest ATS and MTS books include standards on inspecting EV charging stations. One of their main tasks is to certify testing companies. The NETA Accredited Company Program, or NAC program, has really strict requirements ensuring each of the over 100 NACs are qualified independent third-party testing agencies. Requirements include specific corporate structures, like being of a certain size, having annually calibrated test equipment, employing at least one professional engineer, and having a certain number of each level technician. They spell out everything from reporting criteria, steps to take for system commissioning, and what data you need to put on your test stickers. Like, there's a lot of rules to be a NETA accredited company. The primary hurdle to a person becoming a NETA technician is that you need to work for a NETA accredited company. You can't take the exams or become NETA certified unless your employer is accredited and signs you up for it. Similarly, if you leave the company, you can lose your certification because it's kind of tied to your employer. Now, your cert can be transferred from one NETA accredited company to another for a brief period, but it takes a little bit of legwork to do that. While NETA doesn't have that many full-time, direct employees, they organize 21 committees consisting of volunteers from numerous NETA accredited companies and their partner organizations. NETA has subject matter experts that sit on industry-related panels and standards writing bodies such as IEEE, NFPA, ICEA, ASTM, and the CSA. They also regularly author articles for Electrical Construction and Maintenance Magazine, Electricity Today, and T&D World Magazine, as well as their own publication, the NETA World Journal, which I actually get this one delivered to my house. It's fantastic. I sent an email to NETA asking a few questions, including how many techs of each level they have. While they're super happy to answer a whole bunch of other questions, including some great information that I've sprinkled throughout the rest of this video, they politely declined to tell me how many techs of each level they've accredited. But I was able to do a quick people search on LinkedIn for the different levels, and using different keywords, I sort of came up to a rough estimate of about 6,000 NETA 2s, about 800 NETA 3s, and about 500 NETA 4s. Those numbers are probably off by a factor of 2 or 3, so take that with a grain of salt, but it'll give us a point of comparison for NICET. NICET, or the National Institute for Certification in Engineering Technologies, really rolls off the tongue, is a division of the National Society for Professional Engineers, founded in 1961. That's the same organization that's responsible for the FE and PE exams, if you're familiar with those. They wanted to create standards for certifying what they called engineering technicians or engineering technologists. As such, they aren't solely focused on electrical apparatus testing like NETA is. They offer certification exams in the following areas. Civil engineering technologies like asphalt, concrete, soil, and highway construction inspection. Fire protection and building systems such as fire alarms, fire suppression, public safety communications. They also have a course or a certification program for video security systems. The focus of my comparison for this video is only the electrical power testing or EPT program, but I think it's important to understand where the certification organizations stand and what their overall purpose is. NICET's only apparent motivation is selling their certificates. The only thing they do is sell you the test. NICET doesn't care about your employer, how well you do your actual job, how you write your reports. They don't accredit your organization. They don't publish standards or drive industry change. For the most part, you hand them a check and they give you a test. It's a brilliant business model for them. The real benefit to this is that it's only tied to the individual. If you work for an equipment manufacturer like Siemens or GE, or a smaller mom and pop testing company that doesn't meet the strict standards for NETA accreditation, you can move your career forward as a tech and get the certifications by going through the NICET EPT program. As a side note, I emailed the same list of questions to NICET about a month ago and never got a response. So the info I'm sharing is either from Wikipedia or their own website. Now, doing the same LinkedIn search, I found a tiny fraction of people with the NICET EPT on their profile, and my level 4 certification is number 35. My best guess is that there's less than 5% as many NICET EPT certified techs as there are NETA techs, but again, based on super flimsy evidence, take that with a grain of salt. The differences are pretty apparent from the tech's perspective. First off, if you work for a NETA company, your manager or a rep from your company will usually sign you up for the exams and do all the background paperwork. Your job as a tech is to take the test and pass it. That's it. If you pass the level 3 exam, you're a NETA 3. Your company will usually track when you're eligible for the exam and encourage you to take it. It makes them look better as a company. They'll also track your CTDs and help you keep up with your continuing education and training requirements. With NICET, it's your responsibility to jump through all the hoops on your own. You need to make an account, fill out an application, sign up for the exam. You got to submit your CTDs on your own. There are some really fun parts of the application too. You need to fill out an employment and skill verification form and have your supervisor sign and submit that. For the level 3 and level 4, you need a recommendation letter. Now this one screwed me over for a while because the recommendation letter needs to be written by a licensed professional engineer. If you haven't worked directly with a licensed professional engineer, you're going to have a hard time finding one to write you a recommendation letter. The other option is you can have a recommendation letter written by someone with a NICET EPT level 4 certification. But again, like I said, there's only probably 35 NICET 4s out in the wild, so good luck finding one. As another kick in the pants, your recommender also can't be your verifier, so those have to be like 2 different people. And lastly, for the level 4 cert, you need to turn in a written essay on a major project you've led and executed, which isn't too hard, assuming that you've actually been in a leadership role, but again, it's just more steps for no real reason. As far as the levels go, if you work as a tech at a NETA company, you're automatically level 1. There's only 3 exams to take. Now, NICET being a company that only makes money by selling the exams, you need to take an exam for all 4 levels. They test you for level 1. Interestingly, you can take any of the NICET exams at any time and seemingly in any order. You just can't get the certifications until your application is approved after you've passed the exam. This can make the process of the verification, the major project write-up, and the personal recommendation letter super annoying if you get rejected on one of the many, many technicalities after you've done all the work to pass the exam. That's not a problem with NETA because your company makes sure that you're allowed to go up to the next level before you take your exam. As far as exam content goes, I'll just throw the graphic up on screen, and you can look into the specific course outlines if you're interested. I'll have the links in the description. As you can see, the format is fairly similar. The level 1 and 2 are mostly safety and super basic fieldwork stuff. Level 3, for the most part, is on apparatus testing, breakers, cables, transformers, a few basic questions on relays, and some electrical theory. You'll have some math questions where you need to solve RLC circuits, trip time curves, power equations, and things like that. Both level 4 exams, the NETA and the NICET EPT4, are pretty damn hard. Fault current calculations, questions on GIS, advanced relay protection like end-to-end and differential protection, system commissioning and substation SCADA systems, and they've even got some like esoteric troubleshooting questions. Both tests are very, very hard at the level 4 level. All the exams are computer-based, proctored by Pearson VUE testing centers. I was able to find them at a couple nearby community colleges. They're all multiple choice. The NETA are 4-choice single answer, but NICET has some like multiple selection questions. They give you a calculator and a formula cheat sheet that has maybe 90% of the equations you're going to need. It's still good to have it all fresh in your head. From my experience, the NICET exams have some really poorly worded questions. The level 3 and 4 have like weird situational questions where all of the possible answers could be correct given like different circumstances, yet they don't give you enough background information to pick out a single answer. NICET also has a lot of like pick 3 out of 4 questions where either 2 or all 4 answers felt correct to me. I genuinely didn't like the NICET EPT 3 and 4 exams. Not because they were hard, right? Like I'm okay with a hard exam, but because they were poorly written and confusing. I even called and emailed to complain to their program development team, but I got the, we're short-staffed due to COVID excuse, so I assume the tests are just going to be like that for the foreseeable future. The NETA exams at all levels, I seem to be more interested in like your problem-solving ability and how well you understand the overall system more than just the ability to memorize facts and numbers. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the NETA exam just felt like a better judgment of your skill in the field. I'm kind of splitting hairs here, but it's a noticeable difference in exam quality. I think the NETA 4 exam is harder, maybe like 5 or 10% harder than the NICET EPT 4. The math problems were definitely more intense. All right, continuing education. NETA calls them CTDs, NICET calls them CPDs, whatever acronym you prefer. This is how the organizations track your continued training within the industry. NETA only counts credits from certified training providers, such as their own training, AVO, ProTech, IR training, DOBLE, and SEL classes, things like that. There are a ton of training providers, but check that they're certified for NICET CTDs before you sign up. On the other hand, I've had NICET accept some less standardized training in the past, like an online Modbus class from Skillshare. So I think they're a little bit less picky as long as you have some paperwork for it. The overall volume of training required is way different. And I think a lot of that is because you can hold a NICET cert without that field being your full-time job. If you're a full-time testing tech, you can automatically subtract 24 credits per year for being what they call an active practitioner. So you only need 18 CPDs per 3-year cycle if electrical testing is your full-time job. Meanwhile, NETA requires 24 hours for level 2s and 48 hours for level 3s and 4s. And again, this is in a 3-year cycle. It can actually be kind of difficult to catch up with 48 continuing education credits or CPDs in a year. So it's really important that you get some training like spread out throughout the 3-year cycle. The best I've found for newer techs is definitely getting your level 1 and 2 certifications for IR scanning, because those are long classes that stack up a ton of hours really fast, and the information is great. For more senior techs needing like ongoing training, the free monthly webinars from ProTech are fantastic. I'm not affiliated with them, but I'll link that down below if you guys are interested in getting signed up. It's important to note that your 3-year cycle gets reset every time you increase your certification level. If you pass an exam, you get 3 more years to keep up your CTDs. Again, it's easier to look at the chart for specifics here. They're very similar. The two big differences are that NETA has a certain number of training hours required before you can take the exams that your employer has to sign off of. And NICET requires supervisory or project experience to move up to level 3 and 4. And there are some asterisks here. For NETA 2, 2 years of electrical education, like an associate's degree program, college, or an electrical apprenticeship, can be applied as 1 year of field experience for all levels. And again, a degree is not required. For NICET, you can count up to 6 months experience as an electrician or lineman for your first year of experience. But I've heard people have issues getting their 2 and 3 and 4 using lineman or electrical apprenticeships as part of that experience. So your mileage may vary on that. All right, so what difference does it make, and why choose one or the other? As a tech, it's not usually like you have a choice between the two. If you work for a NETA accredited company, you'll either be thrown into that program automatically, or you'll need to advance your NETA certification to get like a raise or a promotion. If you work for an OEM or a tiny startup, you don't qualify for NETA membership, so you simply can't take the tests if you aren't employed full-time with a NETA accredited company. There are plenty of field service techs that work for Schneider, ABB, and Eaton, where switchgear and breaker testing is their main job function. And for most of these large companies, it generally doesn't matter whether you get your NICET EPT certification or not. It's really more of a nice to have. The only time it comes in handy is that some customers, including like large government contractors, will put NETA or NICET certification into the contract requirements for performing site acceptance testing. I've seen this more and more lately as the projects that I run get larger and more complex. Lastly, from the tech's perspective, it is certainly nicer working for a NETA company in that they have a designated point of contact. Your boss handles all the paperwork. They tell you when you need to get your CTDs. You just go take the tests. It's fairly simple. If you ever need to deal directly with NETA, they're fantastic to talk to and typically get your issues resolved very quickly, either over the phone or email. NICET, on the other hand, I swear I'm trying to give them a fair shake without being too negative in this video. They can be a huge pain in the ass to deal with. It's a very manual process. You have to do all your application paperwork in sort of an archaic online system. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and the documents that they give you say, hey, you need to do this. They're not actually what they're looking for, and it's really frustrating. And they can take a long time to review and approve things. That's sort of my other problem. In my own experience, it seemed like the people reviewing my NICET EPT4 application didn't have any experience in the power testing field. When I finally got a chance to talk to someone after 3 or 4 months of my application sitting in limbo, the guy actually told me testing relays didn't count for my experience because it was all low voltage. I'm not joking. This dude thought a GEL90 was a ground fault relay. It's frustrating. The most common question I get is, what should I study, or should I take the practice tests? Both NETA and NICET offer paid practice tests for each level. Now, they're great resources, but I wouldn't recommend taking any of them more than once when you're studying, mostly because of the cost. Both of the practice exams are fairly expensive. They're a good fraction of the actual exam that you're going to sit for. I use testguy.net a ton. Again, link will be down in the description. They have paid features that I've heard are totally worth it, and it's an amazing service. I 100% want to support them. However, I'm not getting paid to say anything, so between you and me, I didn't use any of the paid features for any of my tests. The free testguy.net practice tests have a huge base of questions for each level and are an amazing jumping board to launch into your studying. But some of their questions are kind of garbage. Let me explain. The best way I found to use testguy.net was to completely ignore your score. Start taking the practice exam for your level, answer any questions you're confident with, but when you get to something you don't know, stop. Now, it's really easy to Google a single question and get a single answer, but we're not here to pass the practice tests. We're here to study. Google your question and read as many articles as you can on the topic. This is the stuff that you want to take notes on. Let me give you a good example. Say a question that would stump me is, what's the best way to lower the ground resistance at a service entrance? Add more ground rods, increase ground rod length, or increase ground rod diameter. Now, if I don't know this off the top of my head, I'm going to research this question, and along the way, we can learn more about fault potential testing, what acceptable ground resistance amounts are for different applications, how to use a specific ground test set, what factors impact ground resistance readings. At some point in the process, yeah, I learned the answer to that question that stumped me, but more importantly, I learned the answer to 6 more questions. There are a couple questions on the practice tests like, what does IEEE 400.3 cover? And I pretty much skip those. I have no interest in memorizing crap like that. Now, you should read IEEE 400.3 and know vaguely what it does, but you don't need to know the digits necessarily, especially for your NETA and NICET exams. Making flashcards for fuse class ratings or individual ppm ranges for DGA gases, it's just a waste of time because those questions are not going to be on your exam. Or if they are, you'll spend ages studying to get maybe one question right on the exam. What you want is to get a broad understanding of all the topics. Like I said, they're really testing your understanding of the subject matter, not your ability to memorize a table or specific digits. Because in the field, you can thumb through the ATS book and get those numbers that you need. You can't thumb through the book and immediately understand why we short windings for power factor but not for Megger. So having a broad understanding of how things work, I think, is more important than having a digital understanding of the numbers. One major thing I found about the NETA 4 exam that isn't included in the test guy practice tests or isn't prevalent enough is the math. Full load amps, short circuit current for a transformer, things like that. You need to have a vague understanding of sequence components. There will be several math questions that take a ton of time on the exam to complete. But it's a lot easier if those formulas and concepts are fresh in your head. So what's my experience? Why do I have both? I started out my career back in 2013 working for a NETA company. I got up to my level 3, and then I went to work for GE and later Eaton. They're OEMs, so of course I lost my NETA cert. While at Eaton, I was asked to run a project for a data center for the government, and NETA or NICET certification was a requirement for the field acceptance testing. So I got my NICET level 3 while I was working there. A few years later, I go to work for a small startup company that had a testing department, but they didn't meet all the qualifications to be a NETA accredited company at that point. I finally had enough years in the field to take my NICET 4, so I got that. And then a few months later, I quit and went back to work at a bigger testing company. I got my NETA 4 about 6 months ago, and so that's why I have both now. And I plan on maintaining both certs for the foreseeable future. Fortunately, I can use the same CTD credits for both, so it's really not that much of a hassle at this point, as long as I have enough credits. So say you're an electrical testing technician and you don't work for a NETA company. Should you go through all the trouble of getting your NICET EPT certification? I'd say yeah, absolutely. It's totally worth it. Despite how annoying it is to jump through their hoops, it's definitely worth it for me. And it was definitely worth it for the small startup that I worked for at the time. It's a huge selling point to your customers, and we certainly would have lost a few bids if no one on my team had some certification like that to fall back on. And having the credential gave our customers more confidence in our work. And like I said, there are some government contracts that you simply can't get awarded unless you have someone on your team that's NETA or NICET. So having the NICET is a good fallback. It's also worth noting, if you're interviewing for a spot at a NETA company, most hiring managers will assume you can go straight from a NICET 2 to a NETA 2, or 3 to a 3, or 4 to a 4. And it's a great way to get more money when changing companies because it serves as a benchmark for where you are in your career and sort of the skills that you have despite not working at a NETA company. If you already have your NETA certification, should you get your NICET? Probably not. I see no benefit unless you plan to quit and start your own testing company at some point in the future. It's sort of like grabbing a Kroger brand cola when you've already got a Coke in the other hand. Like, why have the second best? Anyway, that's all I got. Thanks for sticking with me. I hope you found something here useful. Share it with your friends in the industry if you think it will help. Stay tuned. I've got some great videos planned. At some point, I will be starting the relay testing training series. I promise I'm going to do it. It just takes a lot of prep work. Let me know in the comments if you got something else you want me to talk about. In the meantime, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next one.